Okay, so now you've got your data in nice columns and you've done the calculations that you need if you needed to do any. Now it's time to use Excel to create a scatter plot to display visually the relationship between these two variables. Now the two variables I'm interested in are weight and BMI. I'm trying to see if there's a link between a player's weight and their BMI in the North Melbourne Football Club. The way you do it is you select your first variable and your second variable. Now this needs to be in the order so that the first variable, the one on the left hand side, is the independent variable and the second variable is the dependent variable. Because then when we go insert, go to scatter and select the one with no joining lines, you're going to get this scatter plot. And the one you selected first, the one that's selected first, the one that was first, in our case, weight, is going to go on the x-axis. And x-axis is always where the independent variable goes. The second one that was selected will always be across here, the y-axis, which is where the dependent variable goes. So, now we've got our scatter plot. Each one of these dots represents a single one of these data points. So one of these dots will be Sam Lloyd, one of them will be Jason Castagna. I think that's just opened up the North Melbourne Football Club page. Oops. So we've got our scatter plot, but we need to make it look a little bit more tidy. The first thing I always do, mainly because it's just the way I was taught, but it's up to you, it's more a stylistic choice, I get rid of these lines. My first physics professor drilled it into me, delete those lines. I think maybe just because he liked the look of it. I think it looks better too. Next, let's put in some axes titles. Let's label these axes. So on a Mac, you would go, on a Mac, most of your addition stuff is here. The Add Chart Element button in Design. So you go Add Chart Element button, axes titles, and click on either one of these. It's going to add in the axes title. On a Windows computer, you've got this handy green button here. If you click on it, you'll get a list of all the things you can add or take away from this scatter plot. We want axes titles. I'll put them both in. Little arrows will give you more options too. Now we've got our axes titles, we have to label them. This, our independent variable, was weight. And then you always include the unit in brackets. This one here. This is BMI, the units for which are kilograms divided by meters squared. I don't think any of your units will be that complicated. Alright, now we've got some nice axes titles. We know what's going on. We can go up here and we can create a proper title for this plot. There is a convention here. You always do the dependent variable versus, some people use the word against, I use the word versus the independent variable. The dependent variable versus the independent variable. And then you can include some information after that. BMI versus weight of North Melbourne Football Club players. The important part, and it's enough to leave it alone, is BMW versus weight. Dependent variable versus independent variable. Y-axis versus x-axis. Always has to be like that. And then you're done. There's a few other things you can add, and you can change any of the settings. You can add grid lines back in. You can add a legend if you've got more than one data set. We're going to learn about trend lines in the next video. You can have data labels, so that looks really complicated. But on yours, you might only have a few. Data labels could be interesting. And if you want to change anything, double click on it, and you'll have an almost endless amount of options here. Just for example, this data is all kind of squished up in this corner. If I wanted to change where my axes start in order to focus in on that a bit, double click weight, click on this options, axis options. Maybe the minimum looks like 60 is kind of about where we would start. So let's put that in 60. That'll zoom it in a bit. We can do the same to this one. Looks like 20 is a good spot to start. 20. That's a possibility. Usually we have the graphs, have our plots start at 0, but if you've got all your data squashed up in one corner, you can change it like that. Look, if you double click on anything, guys, you'll get a whole heap of options, but I'll let you explore that. Good luck.